Hello, and welcome back on again to Fantasy Daily. Good morning, my friends. It is August 17th, Tuesday. It is a nice, cool, sunny morning here in Rhode Island. If you don't live in Rhode Island, then your results may vary, but it is a very beautiful morning. The brisk air coming around, you got the dew on the ground. Now it's starting to get to that football weather. You can smell it in the afternoon. Smells like football practice all over again. So very exciting time. We're finally really creeping on into the football season, and I'm starting to get stoked when the weather really feels like that, and you can kind of sense it as you go. It's just an even more of a nostalgic period and getting excited for the fantasy season and the football season. So we are back. Like I said, it is August 17th. I am your host, NathanPaswell. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, all that stuff that you see pop up at the bottom. Go ahead and check me out there. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. We are moving through the AFC series part of the Outlook series. So we did AFC North yesterday. If you guys haven't checked that out, we had all the AFC North teams on that show. Today we are doing the AFC South teams. So what we got are the 4 teams for you. We're basically going to take a look at how I feel about the players right now, where they stand, what their outlook is for the season, as well as the roster. So I'm going to obviously kind of rifle off some of the roster, some of the key players on the roster, the skill positions, the one that really matter for fantasy football. Talk about whether I think they matter or not for relevance in fantasy football, and it also gives you a refresher on whether or not you kind of weren't paying attention during the offseason to the teams. You've been living under a rock since the Super Bowl ended. I get it, but I'm going to get you back on track here with the AFC series and the NFC series next week. So let us jump on in today to our quick points, and we've only got a couple. One of them really hurts my feelings, so I'll save that one for next. Piece of good news today is that Zach Wilson's surgery did go well, so he is expected to be ready about early on in the season. They're not really looking at the first week right now, maybe second week or third week, so it looks like for the first few weeks we might get Joe Flacco as the starter, but Zach Wilson could come back earlier, we're not sure. So it looks like Zach Wilson will miss at least a couple of weeks. Fortunately for us, that doesn't mean much in the fantasy community because there's not much on that team that I'm going to grab anyway, but we'll save that for the AFC East show. Second piece of quick points is a very tragic one for me. So 2 years ago, I was really high on a lot of players. Josh Allen was one of them. One of the running backs that I was over the moon about coming out of the draft, aside from Jonathan Taylor, was Antonio Gibson. Now, the draft year in Dynasty, I was lucky enough to get Jonathan Taylor and Antonio Gibson in that draft. I've had both of them since, and I loved having both of them. I really like the upside of Antonio Gibson and his ability to be a pass catcher in the slot, move around. I thought Antonio Gibson was a guaranteed, workhorse when it comes to fantasy points. He was going to be involved in a lot. Saw some promises, and ever since, the last season, basically, Antonio Gibson has really teetered off into a running back 2, running back 3 category. Well, we got updates from training camp. The last few days, it hasn't looked good, and I've been kind of biting my tongue on this one, kind of dismissing those reports like whatever. They're just coming back. It is what it is. Antonio Gibson will be fine. It's Gibson. He'll be fine. Well, Antonio Gibson was seen at training camp this week at practices, practicing with the punt team. Now, if you play for a coach like Ron Rivera and you're out there practicing with the punt team, that is not good. So, like I said on the beginner's guide, the tips and tricks, you got to be like water. You got to be willing to change. Some reports come out, you can kind of deflect them a little bit. You can kind of say, all right, I'm going to wait on this one. But when your running back that you want to play is getting put on the punt team and he's practicing with them, he's not even getting second team reps, he's on the punt team, it looks like Antonio Gibson is just about done for. So as far as who would the next man up be, I do believe that they're going to go with some sort of a committee, but J.D. McKissick will be the benefactor of that. But Ron Rivera doesn't just relegate people to the punt team out of, whatever. I do believe that behind the scenes, there's a good chance that Antonio Gibson came back from offseason, was not prepared for an NFL season, and Ron Rivera put him in the doghouse and is just not playing games with it. So unfortunately for me, as a dynasty manager of Antonio Gibson, I do believe it is time to pivot and, realize what you have in that. You got to be looking at another running back of, who you're going to play. So Antonio Gibson's going to fall very, very hard in redrafts leagues. We'll talk about him a little bit more as draft week approaches. But I think it is going to be it's going to be bad news for Antonio Gibson going forward. So I think you have to be like water, and you got to be out on that one, because some reports, like I said, you can deflect. That is not one that you can deflect. You don't just practice with the punt team for a day. Sip time. Alrighty. Moving on to our first team of the AFC South, and if you guys follow the show, you know that I've been big on one of these players all off-season. Huge into this player, because I really do believe he is going to come back, and that is Matt Ryan. You guys know I'm over the moon about Ryan. He's not Phillip Rivers. He's not the Carson Wentz coming into Indianapolis and being, just kind of being there so they have a job or waiting to retire or something like that. This is Matt Ryan's next team as far as him being the general on the field. You talk about Indianapolis. They have a long history with Peyton Manning over there. They want field generals. Matt Ryan is a field general. He can sling the ball. He can control the offense. He can call audibles. He can move things. And I really do believe that this is a redemption kind of storyline for Matt Ryan. He's been waiting a long time since Super Bowl 51 to get some redemption, and I really don't think Matt Ryan is playing just to play this year. I think Matt Ryan currently has one of the best offenses he's ever been on with a competent defense. This team is going to make the playoffs. They're going to make a run, and I do believe that this team has a chance at an AFC Championship game. They got some stiff competition in that AFC Championship game, but I do believe that this team with Matt Ryan has a firm chance at that. So I'm over the moon about Matt Ryan. He's going still in like the 15th, 14th round. I think he's wildly undervalued in fantasy. I think he's going to be pretty good. I understand he's got Jonathan Taylor, but I do believe he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns this year. It's still Matt Ryan. We talked about him a lot on the sleeper shows, on a couple different shows. I've talked about him a few times, but I'm over the moon about him, his potential, what the stats can be, what they have been. His passing yard totals are going to correlate to when he comes over here. The team is easily better. JT, easily still the best running back in the league. He's got the number one O-line. The wide receivers themselves are wildly intriguing to me. It's arguably the best wide receiver core in total that Matt Ryan has ever had. I think Michael Pittman himself has just about the highest upside of any wide receiver currently in the draft at all, where wherever he's going, he could return value as the number one wide receiver. And we could be talking about Michael Pittman in the same breath that we talk about Justin Jefferson next year. Maybe not, that high up, but maybe he's second round, third round. And I do think that Michael Pittman with Matt Ryan has that potential to return form like Julio was over there, except Michael Pittman's going to be getting the touchdowns. He demands those targets. Now, talking about Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell's still a good talent, but the Alec Pierce reports that are coming out of camp right now is that he is very fluid with Matt Ryan. He has a lot of chemistry there, and they are really, starting to gear up and click. So if that's the case, I think that Alec Pierce is going to kind of, leapfrog into that wide receiver 2 role, and you're going to see a lot of passing opportunity, a lot of passing attack on this team, and especially when you couple that with Jonathan Taylor, this offense is going to be fierce. Matt Ryan's going to be able to control this offense. He's going to be able to do a lot this year, and I'm extremely excited to see his potential going forward for the rest of the year and however long he's there. I think this is redemption time. He is ring chasing. He is not just going over there to be there until he retires like Phillip Rivers. He is chasing a ring. The team sees it. They have high standards. The whole Indianapolis culture has high standards when it comes to that stuff. They didn't want Carson Wentz as a team culture. They didn't want him, but they took him. Phillip Rivers, yeah, they were high on it, but he was just on his way out. Matt Ryan is not just on his way out. He's 37. He has games left in him. He has seasons left in him. And I do believe that Matt Ryan, Matty Ice in his veins, is coming back, and he is going to make it rain. He's going to make it snow on y'all, because he's going to be dropping targets this year on Michael Pittman, and I really do believe that those touchdown totals that you wanted with Julio Jones are coming, because he had Calvin Ridley there too. You saw him hyper target. Maybe Alec Pierce fits into that role, but I really do believe that this is the best offense he's ever played in, and he's going to feast in this offense. Ally Cox, we'll talk about him real quick, because I've been a big fan for him for a while. He's massive. He's absolutely dominant when it comes to one-on-one contested catches and stuff like that. So I do think that Ally Cox being the de facto one, he's gonna have chance to be a red zone guy and be a streamer. So as much as I think that the wide receivers and Jonathan Taylor are gonna eat up the majority, if not all, of the work on the team, I do believe that Ally Cox will have outlier games where you can trust, all right, I need a streamer, I can throw him in, and then you can hope that he gets a touchdown. But maybe his touchdown totals later on in the year are a lot more impressive than what we're looking at right now. But I am a big fan of looking at what Matt Ryan and them could do, and I do believe that Ally Cox every now and then will he'll get some pieces thrown his way. Moving on to Jacksonville Jaguars, we are going to be talking about quarterback Trevor Lawrence for the season. They got wide receivers Christian Kirk, who got the big deal in the offseason. They get Marvin Jones. They get Zay Jones as well, so they got the Jones friends over there. Then at running back, we got James Robinson and Travis Etienne. And at tight end, they got Evan Ingram over from the Giants, I believe. I believe he still was with the Giants. I don't think he had any between teams with the Giants. But the biggest offseason addition for me on this team is not Christian Kirk, as much as everybody wants to run the storyline of Christian Kirk. The biggest offseason story for me here is the head coach. They got Doug Peterson. So massively not talked about storyline is Doug Peterson being the coach for Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville has really needed somebody that they could rally around for a long time. They've really needed somebody that they could, kind of go to, be the guy that, really gets the team going. And Urban Meyer and everything that they had the last couple of years was not it. So really excited for Doug Peterson to be over there. I don't believe he should have gotten let go in Philadelphia in the first place. It's absurd that you guys have a statue out front made for him, and then less than a year and a half later, he's gone. So doesn't make sense to me at all. Don't know why Doug Peterson, don't know why he went untouched for a whole year. But he finally fits into Jags, and I think it's a perfect fit for Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. So before we get into talking about Trevor Lawrence, let's talk about Christian Kirk, because that really is the big name on there. He got paid an absurd amount of money. I don't even know where the contract was, but I think it was something like $50 million for 4 years. Absurd contract for somebody like Christian Kirk. And now, while I do believe the talent exceeds the perception of what he was in Arizona, I don't think that the money here, usually we're following the money. We always say you want to follow the money, but I don't believe that the money here is actually going to equal what the de facto number one is on this team, because I don't believe that Christian Kirk has that standalone value, and with Trevor Lawrence, he's probably not going to have it immediately. I think that within the realm of possibilities very early on in the season, we're talking about how Marvin Jones is the number one wide receiver on the team while Christian Kirk is making all that money. So you know how memes go, all the videos go, and all the funny stuff that you're going to see. I think one of the things is going to be that the Jags get laughed at because they paid Christian Kirk all this money, and now Marvin Jones and Zay Jones possibly are balling out more than Christian Kirk. So I think Christian Kirk's still going to be a guy that you can trust in the offense. But as far as draft prices go and everything, Christian Kirk seems to be the guy that everybody's looking at compared to Marvin Jones. They're following the money on that one. And I don't want to touch anything as far as wide receivers goes over here, but I will not be surprised if we get a good portion of the way through the season and we're looking at Marvin Jones as the number one. And I do believe that there is a chance that, Marvin Jones and Trevor Lawrence kind of develop a connection like you see with Brandon Cook and Davis Mills, where Marvin Jones could be, kind of under the radar, but consistent every single week, giving you 12 points, 15 points, maybe a touchdown and some odd, for 20 points. But I could see a reality where he is that kind of consistent with Trevor Lawrence, and he is that kind of go-to receiver for Trevor Lawrence. So the wide receiver room there, very, very skeptical from me. As far as draft capital goes, I would much rather take Marvin Jones in a deep league compared to Christian Kirk. But I'm still avoiding basically whatever I can in that offense if I have a choice. Moving on to running back. So the running back carousel here is fun because there really is, since the offseason, just two sides to this argument. You're either on the Travis Etienne side, you're on the James Robinson side. And now, me personally, I have been on the Travis Etienne side because when I'm looking at the metrics, when I'm looking at all things considered, who's the quarterback there, it looks like Travis Etienne needs to be out there. He needs to be the guy that they're going to. He's going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to open up the offense for a lot more. He's going to be able to do a lot more with Trevor Lawrence, with James Robinson being the bully back, the power back. They could, utilize that in situational opportunities and stuff like that. So I do like the appeal of Travis Etienne being the lead guy, with James Robinson maybe being a goal line at third down back. But the more I'm starting to digest it and the more I'm starting to think of what's more likely the reality for Jacksonville as a team, I'm starting to kind of switch my narrative on Travis Etienne a little bit. So 2 weeks ago, I was over the moon about Travis Etienne. I was like, I would absolutely put him in the 6th round. I think he might even been one of my running back sleepers on the show. But I'm really kind of starting to transition my, focus on him. So that's why I always say you got to keep up with the, all the things. Got to keep up with Fantasy Daily here. You got to keep up with me because you're always like water. We're changing our ideals. So a week or so ago, if you saw the running back, sleeper show, I'm talking about Travis Etienne being a sleeper. And now here I am less than a week later going, oh, hold on now, pump the brakes. With camp reports and all things considered, it looks like James Robinson's going to be a lot more utilized than we expect. So with that, I think you have to kind of adjust your expectations about him. I really do think I'm still targeting Travis Etienne, but I really do think that you have to kind of lower your expectations, lower your draft price, and assume that this might be one of those frustrating situations where when Travis Etienne gets on the field, he's easily the most dominant, he's easily the best running back, but that doesn't mean they always put them on the field. So James Robinson might get his in there. So I'm very worried about the running back situation in here the more the time goes on, and I'm sure by the draft time comes, I might be just completely out looking at something different before then. Last but not least, we're talking about Evan Ingram, longtime Giant and one-time fantasy hopeful, moves to Jacksonville, and he's basically all off radars completely. I'm not even in the streamer category. I really don't want anything to do with Evan Ingram. Moving on to the Texans, we are talking about quarterback Davis Mills, wide receivers Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, and Chris Moore. Running back Damian Pierce, baby. We got to get a soundbite for him. I need some sort of soundbite for him because he is I'm hyping him way too much to not have a soundbite for him. And tight end Brevin Jordan. So Texans going to be kind of an easy one to talk about here. I'm going to start with Damian Pierce because I'm over the moon about his price. He's going to be, basically undervalued and underpriced in draft all the way up until draft season. And I do believe that he is going to be a running back 2 floor with running back 1 upside. And we might even be talking about him next season as one of the big names in sleeper categories, or maybe even he's up in the 3rd, 4th rounds. I think that sky's the limit for Damian Pierce, and they need to be starting him week 1. I think it is inevitable that they start week 1. Start Damian Pierce as the running back week 1. So very excited for that to happen. If that does become the case, I think that Damian Pierce right out of the gate is going to be a smash play, a smash start. And I'm willing to even draft him as my flex play with running back 2 upside, but making sure I have insurance on that. But if I want to prepare myself to have Damian Pierce, I'm drafting him as a running back 2. Where his draft price is, I'm not reaching up for him unless I absolutely have to, or if I have the luxury to do it. We'll talk about that more on the draft show. But I'm getting him on my team, and then I'm getting some insurance, and then hoping that right when that time starts, I can put him into running back 2, and then I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the season. But I think that Damian Pierce going to be a fantasy stud, fantasy savior for the first half of the season. Moving on to Davis Mills. I do believe that quarterback Davis Mills will have situational starts in a lot of weeks. I do believe that he is going to be one of those players where you look at the matchups, he's got a weak defense, he's played a couple good weeks, let's fire it up, let's do it. So I do believe that Davis Mills can be started depending on matchup. Once Damian Pierce gets in there, if he is what I think he is going to be, then it's going to help out the Texans offense a lot. They're going to be able to pass a lot more, so I'm excited for that. As far as for wide receivers, it's really porous outside of Brandon Cooks. I'm big on Brandon Cooks this year because I think he continues with that consistency. I think he has even higher upside going into his next year with Davis Mills. So I think that connection is not going anywhere. Brandon Cooks is going to be Mr. Steady. He's not going to be a flashy name, but he's going to keep giving you those points, you know what I mean? And he's going to have upside. He's going to give you the 12, 15 points a week. As far as Nico Collins, Chris Moore, like I said, it's porous outside of Cooks, so I don't want any part in that. And as far as tight end goes, Brevin Jordan, absolutely not. So outside of Brandon Cooks and Damian Pierce, I really want nothing to do with this Texans team. Davis Mills, I think, will have streaming appeal, and I won't be surprised if he's a starter every week come later on in the season where he just keeps getting it done. Because I do think Davis Mills' potential is a lot higher than what we're talking about right now, or as what the perception is of Davis Mills right now. But me personally, I am completely out if your name isn't Brandon Cooks or Damian Pierce right now. Over the moon about Damian Pierce. Will not stop being over the moon about Damian Pierce. He is one of my favorite players I've seen in a while, probably since Jonathan Taylor. That was 2 years ago. Moving on to our last team for the AFC South. Going to keep these shows nice and tight for you. Keep that down to that half an hour because that's really where I expect to be on most shows. I really try to keep everybody down to the half an hour. A lot of those shows out there, that I watched that I was big fans of before I started this show. My biggest gripe with all those shows is I was like, man, y'all way too long. Y'all way too long. Obviously, me personally, I ramble, I go on, but those shows were way too long. They didn't really have the thick of the details, the condensed versions that I want. So that's what I try to do for you guys here. I try to get that condensed version of the show, really condense it all down, only hit the hot points, which actually is funny. I had another friend that I want to bring up real quick. I had him ask me, on your show, you're really only talking about people that you like. I never hear you talk about the people that you don't like, which I would assume that sometimes it does get snuck in, but I do give him credit, and I do agree with the fact that the majority of the time I'm only talking about how much I like people. So when it comes to seeing it from his point of view, he's saying, it looks like you like everybody then. Well, beginning of the season, when we're going into draft season, what I like to do is I like to isolate those names, because you're not going to watch every show. You're going to watch 2 or 3 here. You're going to watch 1 or 2 here. And if I hope you watch every show. Thank you all for your, people who do. But I like to make sure that I'm constantly pushing the names that I'm high on in the draft. That way when you get to the draft room, or if you get to your draft day, especially when you're in a live draft and you're swiping through names, it can almost appear as a sea of names. I want these names to jump out at you. So during the season, you'll hear me talk a lot more in depth about certain players, certain teams, their outlook for the week or even the rest of the season. But pre-draft, building up to the draft is a very, kind of secluded process, an isolated process where I try to map out everything perfect. That way I can cover basically all landscapes preparing you for draft. So basically, August 1st until September 1st, or whenever your draft day is, August 28th is mine, whenever your draft day is, I try to prepare and, kind of map out everything to get up to that date. So you're not going to hear me talk a lot about the people that I don't like, because I don't want those names to stick into your head. If you hear me talk about a name a lot, when you're going through drafts, Matt Ryan's going to pop out to you. Damian Pierce is going to pop out at you. CeeDee Lamb is going to pop out at you because I continue to say their names. Joe Mixon is going to pop out at you because I continue to say their names. I continue to make sure that I'm kind of, banging those points home, because repetition is really the best way to learn something. So that's kind of how I like to do it on this show here. Really keep driving those points home, so that way when it comes draft, you're not nervous during the draft, you're not confused, you're not scared. You know what you're doing. You're comfortable while everybody else is panicking, and you're chilling. And then by 8th, 9th round, you're grabbing all the players that you want to grab. You're doing whatever. There's a lot of times where I get into drafts and I'm grabbing defenses and kickers, 3 rounds in advance, just because I have the luxury of being able to do it and I understand the draft that I'm looking at. I'm watching other people panic, make wrong picks, and I know that later on in the draft, the players that I want are still going to be there because everybody else is panicking and grabbing names from last year or something like that. So a lot of different things that you can do to win over your leagues and really help excel yourself at the draft. So I really try to, push all those points home. So sorry to pause on that tangent real quick, but let's roll right back into the Tennessee Titans. And we are going to be talking about Ryan Tannehill at quarterback as well as Malik Willis. We are going to be also talking about wide receivers Robert Woods, Treylon Burks, and maybe a little bit into Nick Westbrook-Ikeen. Running back King Derrick Henry, and tight end newly acquired for the Titans, Austin Hooper. So first and foremost, we're going to be talking about the quarterback, because obviously I'm a big fan of Malik Willis. You guys have heard me talk about him a lot as well. I think he was basically the steal of the draft at quarterback. I think he's going to be a name that we talk about for a few, for the future for Tennessee. And I do believe that, them getting him on, the second or third day that they did was, wild to me. I thought he was going to go second day easily, and when he didn't, that's what it was. He went third day because I was sure he was going to go second day, and he didn't. So Ryan Tannehill, big fan. Do I have breaking news? Oh, I do have breaking news. I get to use the breaking news bar. Ba-ba-ba! Except you guys have probably already heard it because this is previously recorded. Malcolm Butler has been placed on season-ending IR, no, he's been placed on IR, not season-ending. Okay, so I will cut that out. Ba, ba, ba. So Malik Willis, you guys know I've been a big fan of him. I really do believe that he's going to be the starter for the future of the Tennessee Titans. And I think that going into the season, we're going to see Ryan Tannehill basically the majority of the season. But I do think that Vrabel gets antsy and doesn't wait long on Malik when it comes to Malik Willis being the starter in certain situations. So if we get into a game, Ryan Tannehill is really crapping the bed. I do think that Malik Willis comes in. But I also think that Ryan Tannehill is one of those players that knows full well that his job is up for grabs right now, and he is not happy about it. So he has not been very welcoming to Malik Willis. I think that he's going to play for his job, and we should see some high upside here for Ryan Tannehill. But the moment he messes up, I do believe that Vrabel gives Malik Willis a chance to get in there. As far as Robert Woods and Treylon Burks go at wide receiver, I'm not really looking at Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I think Robert Woods should be the de facto number one wide receiver for this team, but I really believe that if you're being honest with yourself, it's up in the air right now. It could be Robert Woods, it could be Treylon Burks, it could be either one of them. So it really is a competition. But I do believe that Ryan Tannehill with these two has a potential to, kind of give us Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen light. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be the same level of them, probably just a tier down, but I do believe that they're going to be really valuable with one on each week, or any given week being the massive upside player. So I do believe that Robert Woods and Treylon Burks are going to have upside. It's just how immense the upside is. And if it is kind of a T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd situation almost, where they're battling it out every week and you really don't want to trust anybody. So, or if you're just throwing him in for flyers. So jury's still out on that one. That is one that I really do, I want to wait until the season to see. So me personally, I'm kind of avoiding both these players in draft if I can. But there has been a couple mock drafts where I see Robert Woods and right in the certain spot that he's in. I'm like, all right, go ahead, I'll grab him there. But outside of that, Derrick Henry, you keep drafting him. He's a menace. He's going to keep being King Henry. He comes back after a foot fracture last year, and it's like he never even left. The dude is an animal. And then Austin Hooper to talk about last for the Tennessee Titans. I do believe that Austin Hooper has the chance to emerge as a solid tight end too. And the reason I say that now is because I think that outside of Robert Woods, the only person that has really, main big game potential is Austin Hooper. So that report can kind of run back with Ryan Tannehill, where he could trust them a little bit more, trust Hooper up the middle a little bit more with, like I said, Robert Woods is kind of an inside guy. Treylon Burks, I do believe, is going to be an outside guy. Treylon Burks, I do believe, is going to be an outside guy. So when it comes to, the Woods and Treylon battle for wide receiver one, I think that does leave a little window of opportunity open for Austin Hooper, and I wouldn't be surprised if he emerges as that, kind of tight end two role for the Tennessee Titans. And my friends, that is my show I have for you on the AFC South. It's so funny, we're at the 27-minute mark, and I feel like I haven't done anything on this show. I feel like I ran it short, but that's how it's supposed to feel. A nice condensed version of the show where I can rattle off all these names. You can get basically a giant summary of everything that I'm thinking, all the outlooks and all the studying that I've been doing, because I could ramble here for 3 hours. I could have my own, podcast where all I do is sit here and talk about football and fantasy all day and all the things that I see. I could do it nonstop, but I try to condense it down, make it easily digestible for you, because we got stuff to do. We don't got all day for this. And I do appreciate you guys carving out some time for me, hanging out so we can talk about some fantasy football. Everybody, thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Tomorrow we will be doing AFC East with the Patriots, the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins. So going to be a fun one talking about all those. A lot of implications, a lot of question marks going on around that show. But the only questions you do not need to wonder are if you will make playoffs, because you will, because you tune into Fantasy Daily every single day. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Take care so much and have a good day today.